This is the second video on learning how to improvise vocally. And just to review, the main point I made in the first one was that you don't really need to know anything to start doing this in some fashion. You can sing along with anything. Sing along with something that you know, I think, or have heard before might be a good idea. Something that's not too complicated, although I've heard people sing over some very complicated things. But you don't need to know, I don't think, the chord progression or even the key. Because, first of all, unless you have perfect pitch, I don't think the key matters too much. And if you check the videos I have here that are a cappella, you'll find that probably they're in between keys, because I don't have perfect pitch. I have fairly good relative pitch, and that's good. I think if you don't have that, your chances as a professional musician are pretty much zero, unless you can play a double high C. That's a joke. So you can sing along. That's the point, and it doesn't matter how it sounds, because if you're like most people, your voice is not hasn't been used much. Okay, so it may sound bad at the beginning, and I'd say take it easy. Don't sing too loud. I haven't really heard of anyone hurting themselves scat singing, regardless of what you may have read or heard. There's a big anti-vocal jazz faction out there that mostly, a lot of them are vocal teachers, and a lot of them are friends of mine. They just don't think that this is something that the voice should do. And, they see it as kind of trolling around for notes, and that's not what's happening. In the best case, what's happening to me is that I hear the rhythm section behind me, even though they're not there, and I just can kind of go along with them. Okay, and I think hearing something in your head is a great start. Ultimately, I don't think you really want to be thinking of anything or hearing anything. When I'm the most tuned in, you could stop me and ask me what I was thinking, and I would say, I don't know. I don't know. I'm concentrating on listening with my mind. I'm listening with my mind, listening to what's going on in my mind, because I can, in the cases of a tune that I know, I can sort of conjure up a rhythm section, if it's not too complicated. Giant steps, no. I've done some a cappella practicing on that, and I'm not too proud of what came out. Anyway, so sing. That's first. Second, and if you enjoy that, which I hope you do, no matter how it sounds, then I hope that you will pursue improving it. Okay? And how do you improve it? The main way is to listen to jazz musicians, not singers necessarily. Actually, instrumentalists seem to be a better choice. I don't know why that is, and I'm a singer, so if I'm putting down singers, I'm putting down myself. But it is. I remember being in college, and our vocal jazz ensemble was pretty good. One of the better ones I've heard, actually. And the director would stop instrumentalists in the hall and say, match this pitch. And if you could match the pitch, then he would put you in the vocal jazz ensemble. And that's what happened to me. From walking down the hall to being in a dashiki in 1980 in a vocal jazz ensemble. I'll talk about that experience sometime, because that was very interesting and very profitable and very practical and all of that, with a couple of small exceptions. So you're singing and you're listening. This is all good. It's all good. The next thing that happens for jazz improvisers is imitating someone else. Okay? You notice I haven't quite gotten to learning scales and chords. Okay? And I might not get to those, because I found that a lot of those things just kind of fall in place if you do the other things. If you spend a lot of time listening to jazz and kind of critically, not necessarily criticizing, but analytically listening. What's happening? What are they doing? How's the time? And so forth. Doing anything with the pitch? If you can hear all that stuff, then you have a chance of incorporating it, and that's imitating. And it can go so far as to imitate a certain style or a certain player. The first time I heard John Faddis, I thought it was Dizzy Gillespie, maybe on steroids, because he really nails Dizzy Gillespie's licks and sound and style, and it's just really an homage to Dizzy is what I think of as John Faddis, and that's not the worst thing you could do. And I know people who really like the way Louis Armstrong sings, which would be 100% of people, but and try to incorporate some of that phrasing and that rhythm into their solos on vocally, and that can be done. You can if you have some sort of background in listening to players, you can come up with something. Now, having said that, I know someone's thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to sound like Dizzy Gillespie. Well, yeah, true. Maynard, no. But I can find a lick here and there, even in those players, and say, wow, that was pretty cool. What was that? Can I sing it back? And once again, I haven't talked about chord progression, notes and chords, or the key, or any of that. This hasn't been mentioned, okay? Because if your ear is reasonably good, and the tune isn't too crazy, your ear will tell you what key you're in very quickly, probably 2 measures at most. And how do I know that? I know that because it's very difficult to sing a wrong note if you're in a key. Okay? I can sing a lot of wrong notes if I'm not in any key. No relation to each other. It's not the individual notes, it's how they get from one to the other that makes the difference. And you can practice doing this. You can sing the melody, which is hard for me because I don't know them all, and I certainly don't know all the words, I'm sorry to say. I am one of the people that think that you ought to know the words to tunes you play, at least if you're going to sing it. And what kind of tune is it? Is it a happy tune, sad tune, slow? And could you have a fast, sad tune? Yeah, maybe. A slow, happy tune? Sure, you could. So the tempo has something to do with it, but not everything. I'm rambling here, and that's okay. For me, anyway, it helps me think about what I want to say, and that way I don't have to do 2 takes, because I can't remember the beginning anyway. So now we have gotten to the point where we were singing along with music that we didn't really know what it was. It doesn't matter. It can be in your car. Next, we are listening to jazz, a lot of jazz. Soloists, not just singers. If you're going to learn about scat singing, you better find yourself a singer that can do it, so you have something to imitate. And there are some, Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, for sure, and more. But certainly not all singers can do this. Or that's not what I want to say. Certainly not all singers do this. I am convinced that if you can sing and be in a key and match pitch, you can do this. Now, you may not sound like Betty Carter, at least at the beginning. No, well, you never will, but you can learn how to make it sound like you're making the chords without actually knowing what the chords are. Okay, because I've been doing that for 30 years. What you need to learn how to do is hear chord progressions. This is the first time I'm mentioning that. Okay, it's the first time I mention chord progression, because at a certain point you will run up against something that you don't quite get. Your mind is not leading you that way, and so at that point you can either quit or you can take a look at it. What is going on here? And oftentimes taking a look at it is nothing more than not singing for a certain period of time, so you can hear what's going on better. I've said many times that you can't sing or play louder than what you're playing with or singing with, because if you do, you'll be out of tune. It just won't work. The tempo won't be there. It doesn't work. You cannot be louder than what's accompanying you. I'm just telling you that. Yeah, you can try it all you want. But I would say, in the years that I directed jazz bands, which was quite a few years, maybe 40, something like that. 90% of the problems, or more, that we had, right up to the professional level, was playing too loud. Playing too loud. If you play too loud, you have reduced your dynamic range. So you don't have the benefit of that extra headroom that you could use, maybe. Too loud. It also means that you're going to be running out of gas sooner. And certainly that happens to me on the trumpet when I play too loud. Better to be quiet a little bit and be able to hear. So how do we perform? We need the audience to hear us. And if we're quieter than what's accompanying us, how are they going to hear us? Well, we don't need for the audience to be able to hear us quietly. We don't need that quiet. Why not? Well, because in any kind of situation where you're going to be singing, they better have a microphone. They better have a microphone. And so you can get on the mic and let the system make you loud enough and balance you. And your sound that's going to be going out to the audience is coming from the side, probably. Okay? So it's able to be heard at maybe an equal level as the background at that point. But from where I'm standing or where the singer's standing, it's not that way. What we're hearing back is kind of the flavor of the background and then our own sound back through the monitor. And how that's balanced is critical. But in any case, we're not going to be able to sing in tune or in time if we sing louder than what's accompanying us. And how can a singer sing louder than a drum set? Well, I tell you what, all it has to be able to do is cover up the sound in your own ears. It's like that joke where the person doesn't want to hear the other person speak, and so they go blah, 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 blah. Well, that's maybe not that loud, but with all that blahing going on, the words that the speaker are trying to get through to you are not going to be heard. Okay, so that's a small lesson. Be quieter. You know, it happens to me all the time. I say to myself, why am I so loud right now? There isn't any musical reason for it. And back off a little bit. Okay? Now, what's next? After we've gotten to this point, we're listening, we're working on this, giving it a shot, and imitating. Maybe we found some person's style that we really like. I don't know that I have one. I would say most of what I do is really closely based on Dixieland, the way Dixieland gets through guide tones, and bebop a little bit, but bebop came from Dixieland. Don't tell anybody that. In spite of the antagonism between the Dixielanders and the beboppers, there's not much difference between some of the solos. The main thing is that bebop goes through more keys and it's generally faster. Other than that, I don't hear too many differences. The instrumentation may be different, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. So the idea of guide tones has been in operation since the Common Practice period in music, about 1600. So the use of those in a line is going to tie you to history, not just the history of jazz, but the history of music. And I think we kind of want to be tied to that. We don't want to be without any mooring. Without any anchor. When I hear someone say they don't have any influences, and they don't listen to others, they're their own person. Well, I don't want to listen to them either, and because what they're doing is using their own ego to create the entire situation. So, and probably too loud. Okay, so I'm being snarky today. I shouldn't be. I made my speaker, which was broken, is now working. My duck is having a nice nap. I don't really have a reason to be snarky, but I do have to think of the next step for you all. Okay, because we've gotten to the point where you're comfortable. You can sing. You know what a guide tone line is, and maybe you can find it sometimes. There's all sorts of ways you can help yourself. You can sit at the piano while you do it and play the guide tone lines to let you hear them. You could transcribe solos. I'm not a big fan of transcribing whole solos. I've done a few in my life, mainly for assignments. But I'm not going to put anybody down for doing it. You can't. How could you hurt yourself listening to somebody like Charlie Parker long enough to transcribe what is being played? I mean, that's got to be like a lesson. I just never found it interesting enough. I don't. That's a bad way to put it. But I'd rather play than transcribe it, and you know, that's my problem. So we're imitating, and we're good to the point where we've listened to enough musicians that we have some idea of how we want to sound. Okay, here's what's next. What's next is what I'm doing right now. Not a cappella necessarily. Record yourself. Record yourself. And it's easy to do. Just a play along could be on the stereo or on Alexa for that matter. And you can record yourself with your phone. Now, a lot of people don't enjoy listening to themselves improvise or play. And additionally, all the videos I'm making have my face all over the front. And why did I do that? Well, I really am in love with myself. No, that's not the reason. The reason was I was curious to see what kind of facial expressions I use when I sketching, because I've never seen myself do it in any video that I'm aware of. And it's fairly interesting. I think I'm kind of spastic, and I definitely do certain things when certain things happen in the line. And I don't know that that's a problem. So record yourself. What do you think? Here's some questions you could ask yourself. Am I too loud? If I turn the play along back up, down, would you hear the chord progression? Now, that's not absolutely a requirement, because you could play ambiguously and still be within the chords, okay, and then without playing wrong notes. A lot of musicians do that, and it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, playing ambiguously means that you're not going to be using the guide tones the way they usually are used, and that's more or less what playing ambiguously means to me, and it's hard for me to do that. So we've recorded ourselves, and we're asking ourselves questions. How do I look? That's not a great question, at least for me. But am I with the rhythm section? Am I locked in? That's a term that I never quite agreed with, because being locked is so restricted, you know? And we do want to be in the tempo and the time that's going on, but we don't want to feel locked into it. Okay, now, might be a good idea to feel locked into it at the beginning, because you do want to be able to perform in time, okay? But sooner or later, I'm not locked in that way, okay? I think that's probably good enough for today. It's nearly 20 minutes. And no one's going to listen to it. I know they aren't. But 20 minutes of my BS. Vocal jazz BS, too. That's a special kind. This is the Unknown Sketch Singer and Bonsai Anonymous 2-in-1 signing out.